Hey, so today I'm going to do a video about how my personality as someone with AvPD might present difficulties in attempting a romantic relationship. And originally I was going to do this video just about my personality presenting difficulties in general, but I realized I could sort of frame pretty much all of them in the context of a romantic relationship to sort of explain them in good detail. Uh, and when I say my personality, I don't mean the AvPD symptoms specifically. Obviously, it's a personality disorder, but it sort of modifies my personality in some ways. So I'll be talking about that more specifically than the symptoms. Obviously, this is going to be very personal for me and kind of embarrassing. So if it's cringy, try to bear with it, and I understand if you can't. So the first thing I want to point out is that I'm definitely not an authority on being in a relationship with AvPD because I have never been in one. I'm very low functioning, and like I said in my life story video, my AvPD symptoms have always been especially bad when speaking to girls because I feel like I'm coming across as creepy even if I focus really hard on acting normal. I just, my physical symptoms are really bad and my speech gets really fucked up, so yeah, I have not ever attempted to have a romantic relationship in any real way. So I'm pretty much speaking introspectively here as in what issues would come up when I did theoretically attempt this in the future, which I would like to some extent if it's ever possible. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But the main thing is I'm not going in blind because obviously there's a lot of similarities to a romantic relationship to any other close relationship, and I have had friends and stuff, so it's there's a lot of similarities that I can draw on to sort of extrapolate some of the challenges there might be. So first off, we'll start with whether someone with AVPD, and of course I'm just talking about me specifically, but some other people might be able to relate, might want a relationship in the first place. So first, some of the obvious drawbacks for me. I tend to feel very stressed out when I have to learn about other people's problems that they're dealing with. It's not that I don't want to. It's not that I don't want to help them. Rather, it's the opposite. I feel very guilty if I'm not always able to help people with their issues. But of course, in a relationship, people expect to be able to vent about their issues, but they don't necessarily expect you to be able to fix them. And I find that very stressful to deal with. I'm used to suffering through some of my own issues, but I feel like if it's somebody else's and they're telling me about it, it's like they're asking for help and I need to be able to help them, even though that's not always the case. And even if they are, you can't necessarily do anything. Um, I wouldn't expect anyone I was in a relationship to suddenly fix all of my issues for me, of course. Um, but in general, I would like to be in a relationship someday if I ever met someone that makes me feel more comfortable with myself and vice versa. But of course, there's a lot of challenges to that. So we'll start by saying we're going to ignore the most obvious obstacles, which are that because I have AVPD, I have extreme social anxiety and fear of judgment, and meeting any human being, much less going on a date with someone, is extremely difficult for me. So we kind of have to ignore that for the purpose of this video because, you can watch all my other videos if you want to hear general issues with social anxiety. So we'll assume that I have somehow improved my social anxiety to the extent that I can go out and talk to people. Of course, it would nevertheless be very stressful and awkward, but we're going to assume that I've somehow figured that out and gotten past that. So there are, of course, obstacles beyond that point that leave me to doubt that I could ever manage a relationship. So some of these things I'll talk about are usually irrelevant or masked with people that I don't know very well. If I'm talking randomly to someone in public, which of course I'm really uncomfortable doing for other reasons, but these reasons specifically don't tend to come up in a random conversation. They're more when I get to know people on a more personal level that they become issues for me and potentially for the other person. So I'll just preface this by saying I've got quite a list of issues here, but I don't mean to say that all of these are only because of AVPD or unfixable because of AVPD or excused by AVPD. It's just that they're difficult issues that for me, I feel like are related to my AVPD developing or becoming worse because of it. And I would need to work very hard on fixing these issues before I could have a relationship. And I imagine a lot of other people with AVPD could relate to many of these. And of course, the first step before I can work on any of these is to figure out how I can talk to people whatsoever again, because, previously school forced me to do that. I never said that explicitly, but I think that's pretty obvious. I didn't have a choice but to go to school from elementary school to high school, and I went to a bit of college as well. And of course, I had to talk to people to some extent. And it was never easy. It only got harder. And then once I didn't have to go to school anymore, then I didn't. And I didn't talk to people anymore except, a couple close friends and family, like I've mentioned before. So let's get started on some of these issues. So the first one is that I probably still won't want to do anything in public. Let's say I figured out the anxiety part enough to the extent that I can manage talking to someone or going on a date or something. I probably still am not going to want to go in public and just do an activity. Anything. I'm just not comfortable with that. I'm never going to be comfortable with that. It makes me super self-conscious of what other people would think of me or the person I'm going out with. It doesn't really matter. It's just I still couldn't handle doing many things at all in public. So things that you would do together would be automatically very limited, because it's sort of torturous for me to do things like that. And I expect that even if I get a handle on my social anxiety, I'm not suddenly going to want to go do all of these things. And of course, you can't cure your social anxiety as someone with AvPD. You can just develop skills for realizing that you need to get the fuck over it, basically, which I'm not there yet to reemphasize. But anyway, another thing is that I have very low self-esteem, and if you are around me long enough in a personal capacity, we're talking or hanging out or whatever, it'll be very obvious that I have very low self-esteem, and that's going to probably be exhausting and depressing for another person to deal with. I know it is. Anytime I hang out with family members or other friends, I know, I'm not just whining all the time, obviously, but just subtle ways I act or talk sarcastically or something, it's just very obvious that I'm not happy, and it's hard to put up with, basically. I know it is, but I can't necessarily do anything about it, at least at the moment. And especially on a bad day, it's just there's nothing you can do about it, basically. Another thing is my depression and anxiety mean I'm not able to consistently be productive even with simple chores. I'm hardworking when I'm able to, but sometimes I'm just not having a good day, and I really can't do much of anything. I think most people who've dealt with depression can empathize with that. But it's not a great trait for a relationship. It's completely random as far as day by day how bad it's going to be, and I'm very inconsistent about that, and it would not be something fun to deal with when you need a person to go to work or just help around the house or whatever the case may be. Another thing is that I am extremely protective of my own personal space, even when I'm with someone that I want to be around and I don't theoretically mind them being particularly close to me. I have a personal space that is larger than average. This is another thing that people with anxiety and AvPD specifically are probably familiar with. It's just even people I'm totally comfortable around, I don't want them within a yard of me. Usually more than that if they can manage it, which obviously people would find really weird in a relationship. It's kind of hard to deal with that, which I get, but I'm uncomfortable with having people so close to me. It just makes me sort of paranoid. It's like I need them at a perfect distance where I'm close enough to see what they're doing, but not so close that I feel like I'm being encroached on. It's really weird, but it's just how it is. So in the same sort of vein, despite liking the idea of physical intimacy, I'm extremely uncomfortable with any physical contact from other people. I get mildly sick to my stomach when I have to give a close family member a hug. So yeah, this would definitely be an obstacle for a relationship that I would need to work on figuring out. So then back at the inconsistency, there's sort of the fact that sometimes I really want to hang out. I really feel like I need some company, right? Sometimes I just have to be alone. I can't handle talking to other people at all. I'm gonna lose my shit for no particular reason. Sometimes I feel like I need to hang out with other people, but also I'm kind of going hysterical. I have moments, even just at complete random. There doesn't have to be a bad situation where I basically just have something resembling a panic attack, but it's less panicky and more like insanity. It's really hard to describe. It's not like I'm losing my grasp on reality or anything, but it's just like I just laugh uncontrollably, and I don't really know how to explain it. It's just like everything seems so stupid and pointless. It's just like, what the fuck is even going on? so these are all really weird, different moods that happen to me. And they're basically super selfish tendencies to need to be with someone or need to be alone or need to be with someone, but also know I'm going to irritate the shit out of them. Um, and I want to always be able to be what someone else needs from me. And if they need me to chill the fuck out, leave them alone, join them, uh, wherever they are. It's really hard for me to do that. I can't do it sometimes. And another thing is that basically happens at complete random. Sometimes it's day by day, sometimes it's hour by hour. I'll just my mood changes, and I just need to do something different as far as other people are concerned. And I'm not particularly good at communicating that because it happens so quickly. And so sometimes that will lead to me being angry at people that are around me before they have a fair chance to realize that, like, I need you to stop talking right now. I can't take it. And, this is something that doesn't make sense to other people or me. It's completely random and it's obnoxious. And yeah, obviously I would have to figure that out before I could be in a relationship, because you can't just suddenly say fuck this and not talk to somebody or insist on hanging out at a complete random time. So yeah, and another thing is that other obnoxious ingrained personality traits I have. So in addition to randomly being hysterical or mad beyond what is reasonable, I'm very often a smartass, and I've mentioned that I have sarcastic tendencies before, but my body automatically sort of tells me to be a sarcastic shithead, even when I know it's unwelcome, just as a defense mechanism. I've talked about in another video, I sort of found that being sarcastic makes people not question you, basically. You can shit talk yourself, people won't know if you're being serious or not. You can shit talk someone else, people won't know if you're being serious or not. And it's not really that I want to shit talk myself or someone else. It's just that the fact that it makes people unsure of whether I'm being sarcastic or not, and they don't want to ask because they don't want to look like an idiot. They're just like, okay, I'm not touching that. So it's just sort of a way to get people to stop talking to you about a certain thing. Um, and obviously, I don't think it's funny that I do that or okay that I do that most of the time. Obviously, sometimes it is. But in most scenarios, basically I overuse it as a defense mechanism. And I would absolutely have to figure that out before being in a relationship, because I, I am obnoxious, and then I immediately realize I'm being obnoxious, and I want to apologize. But apologies only go so far if you do this shit all the time. And I'm well aware that I do that too much. It comes out before my brain tells me that's a fucking stupid idea. So another thing is I'm not very good at talking about or engaging with others in my own interests for fear of ridicule, basically. So this is common with AvPD in general, but obviously it has a specific application with relationships, because it's just I feel so insecure about the things that I like that I don't really want to tell other people about them in case they don't like them, in case they might be very critical of them just because they think it's funny or weird or they don't really get it, or they might not be openly critical about it, but you can just see that they don't really like it, and it makes you feel ashamed, basically. It's even easier to talk about myself than it is about my interests, or to engage in my interests with other people, because if there's something about me that you don't like and you point it out or you seem to react to it, well, I probably don't like that either. Whereas my own interests are things that I do like and other people may not necessarily like. And when that gets called out, or it feels like it is being called out, that makes me feel like shit. So obviously it would be a challenge for a relationship if I don't want to talk about or do any of the things I am interested in with another person. Another problem is that I am very monotone, my voice, but also just the way I use it. I'm just not very expressive. So anytime I try to sound excited or interested in anything, so I just had a stroke there. Basically, I sound very mild with those emotions, and if I try harder, I just sound like I'm faking it. So this tends to, at least in my eyes, as someone with AvPD, it makes me feel like people are thinking that I don't want to hear what they have to say or hear about their interests. And since I'm unable to sound genuine, one thing that I accidentally started doing is I tend to convey interest by instead arguing, basically. If someone will talk about something, then I might pick out a small detail and be like, yeah, I agree with that except for this. now. Understandably, people often see that as me being confrontational over unimportant details, when really my brain is telling me to do that because I'm trying to show that I'm paying attention and thinking about what they say and considering it and responding and being an interesting human being. But in practice, it's sort of fucking annoying when people do that, and I know that people do that to me sometimes, and it's very obvious that it's like, oh God. But I do it sometimes just out of habit because I don't know how to sound interested. I am interested, but I can't necessarily convey it. So instead, I try to engage on a more intellectual level, which is really fucking annoying if you do it constantly. Another thing is that I'm sort of in the same vein. I'm really not good at comforting people. I feel actually very intense empathy. I don't have a problem with that at all. But when I try to convey that empathy to someone else, I often sound like I'm exasperated. I'm not convincing, and I sound tired. And so people might think that I don't want to hear it, I don't want to help them, I don't want to deal with it. But really, the truth is that I sound to me like I'm bullshitting them. And whenever I say all these nice things, and I really mean them, they don't sound earnest coming from me. It's like because of who I am as a person, I have a hard time believing that anyone could believe that I feel that way about them. And so that sort of plays out in the way that I speak sometimes, and I sound frustrated with myself because I want so much to make people feel better, but I am shit at it. And I'm the same way about accepting compliments. Not believing that anyone could really feel that way about me because of who I am. And so whenever I respond to someone complimenting me and thank them, I don't sound like I believe them or that I care about what it is that they said, even though it usually means a whole lot to me. So yeah. And with all of that said, I feel like if I was in a relationship right now, I would bring a whole lot of negatives and really not many positives to it. And I don't want to make somebody else's life worse for any reason. So as long as I feel that that is how a relationship with me would end up, I won't try to be in one. I hope that once I get over, not get over, but once I develop more skills for interacting with people in general, that I will also be able to work on my personality flaws that are either here before AvPD or worse because of it, or whatever the case may be, so that I could try to have a relationship in the future. So yeah, that's just my perspective as one person with AvPD about relationships. Haven't been in any yet. I would like to, but there's definitely a lot of difficulties for me. Who knows? Maybe I will share a more experienced perspective in a few years, but who can say? So yeah, thanks. I hope this has been somewhat interesting, and yeah, I suppose I will see you again sometime soon with some other sort of video. So thanks for watching.